Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies, inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
Welcome to Wake Up Heavy, my weird dad's weird podcast about weird movies.
Hello and welcome to Volume 2 of Why Didn't I Rent This?, the sub-series of Wake Up Heavy Recollections of Horror. This is Mark, and I am going to be talking about Alice, Sweet Alice from 1976. Alice, Sweet Alice is one of those outlier films. It's an oddball. It's not made by people who were known for or became known for horror movies. This was the director's second film. His first film was a pornographic film that got him excommunicated from the Catholic Church, and that sort of informs a lot of what goes on in this movie. It was deemed anti-Catholic, and I think the Catholic Church itself condemned the film, which meant that Catholics were not to see it. And I'll touch a little bit more on that in a bit. For a long time, this movie's claim to fame was that it was one of young Brooke Shields' first roles. And if you didn't grow up in the 70s, you might not be aware of the controversy surrounding Brooke Shields and her mother. Her mom got a lot of flack for some of the roles that she allowed her daughter to perform. And that included this movie, Pretty Baby, and Blue Lagoon, that were considered kind of racy, at least the last two. Alice, Sweet Alice isn't one of those, but I think in my head I kind of conflated it with Pretty Baby, and it might be why I didn't watch it. I think I was confused. I had heard the hubbub about Brooke Shields, and Pretty Baby is a movie that takes place in a brothel, I think, back in the 30s or something in New Orleans, and I'm probably absolutely completely wrong about all that information. I think I thought that this was the movie that people were talking about when they were talking about Pretty Baby. Because Brooke Shields isn't in this very much, and that's a little bit spoilery, but again, we're talking about a movie that's over 40 years old, and it is the plot device that drives the movie forward. Little Brooke Shields as Karen is killed on the day of her first communion. Her sister Alice, who is antagonistic toward Karen, isn't allowed to take communion because she was conceived out of wedlock. So we've got these Catholic ideals here. The mom and father are divorced. It's not explicit, but I think if maybe you were Catholic, it would be a little clearer that this is a family who has fallen out of grace with the church, even though throughout the movie the priest of their church seems very kind to the family, and especially to the mom. But there's a lot of tension, and I really picked up on this the last time I watched it. got a little bit grating to me after a while. There's so much screaming and crying and yelling, all about these rules, all about this stuff. The mom, they're divorced, conceived out of wedlock, and it weighs obviously on Alice, who acts out a lot. And one of the things she likes to do is ride around on her bike in her little yellow Macintosh, wearing a super creepy mask and causing trouble throughout the little New Jersey town that they live in. So she is suspect number one because of her obvious jealousy and antagonism toward little Karen. I think what struck me most about this movie the first couple times I watched it was how stylized it was. There's a lot of interestingly composed shots and a lot of moving camera work. And for someone who hadn't directed a whole lot, it's kind of surprising to me that this guy didn't go on to do more. Alfred Sole, or it could be Sole, I'm not sure, ended up becoming a production designer. He has 4 feature film credits to his name, and then a long list of credits as a production designer, mostly in TV. He obviously took a couple pages out of Alfred Hitchcock's book. I'm actually reminded a little bit of Scorsese's work throughout with the moving camera. A lot of interesting low camera angle shots of feet and things like that. That and the kind of brutality of the violence was surprising, especially for a movie this old. A lot of the anti-Catholic sentiment went over my head. I really tried to pay attention to it this last time that I watched it. And I just get the feeling that it's more a condemnation of the rules, the divorce, conceiving out of wedlock, not being able to take communion. To me, that seems backwards, that a child out of no fault of their own is not allowed to take communion. We won't get into a religious discussion here. It's stuff that I missed because I had heard and read that it was anti-Catholic and really didn't pick up on that. And I think, without getting too spoilery, it does inform the motive of the killer. It has been compared to the movie Seven with its villain's MO. So you may be able to piece it together there. But I'm not going to say who the killer is in this, but you get the idea now of why it is they're doing what they're doing. There's some visual callbacks to other films. One influence is Don't Look Now. And the director, if you haven't seen Don't Look Now and you have Shudder, go watch it. If you don't have Shudder, go get it and watch Don't Look Now. It is an amazing, amazing movie. It turns into a horror movie in the last 5 minutes of the film, but it's just an amazing work. And the connection is with the raincoat, and it's a little red raincoat in Don't Look Now and a little yellow raincoat in Alice, Sweet Alice. The other callback is to Italian movies of the 60s and 70s that are called giallo. And I'm not going to get into a history of giallo or even the definition because we live in the world of the internet, but Dario Argento and Mario Bava are 2 well-known directors who made giallo movies. So if you're familiar with them at all, you kind of get the idea. It has that feel. We've got a masked killer that uses a knife, and that is related to giallo and slasher films. And I don't see this so much as a slasher, and it kind of predates Halloween and the slasher boom of the 80s. But a lot of people consider it one of those proto-slashers like Black Christmas and all the other ones that I've mentioned numerous times. It's also got that gritty feel of regional filmmaking. And back in the 70s, this was more of a thing where, some dude in North Carolina or Georgia, or in this case, New Jersey, decided that they were going to make a film, and they film it all there. They use people from there. Not all the cast are New Jersey folks, but there is a notable New Jersey figure who plays the really disgusting landlord of the building that this family lives in. And he was not a professional actor, and I'm not going to say too much about him other than you need to see him and witness his performance in this movie. It is stomach-turning. And he is a big part of the sleaze factor of this movie. It really rides the line of being sleazy to the point of exploitation. It keeps from going over that line for most of the movie, at least for me. I think a lot of people would probably put it on the other side of the line, but we've got a lot of family drama. It's kind of a police procedural as well. The police are shown as fairly adept at their jobs. They are not bumbling idiots. They don't just focus solely on Alice. There is some question as to whether she is in certain places or times when these events happen. The murder or the attack set pieces are quite shockingly not graphic, but they're really brutal. The attack on the aunt is sort of an amazing little 5-minute scene in this movie. She doesn't get killed, but it is a harrowing scene. And then when the father, who has come back to town, of course, because his daughter was murdered, when he chases the hooded figure, it again reminded me of Don't Look Now. But his attack scene is quite convincing, and a lot of that has to do with the camera work and the editing. So again, we've got guys that either knew what the heck they were doing or just got really lucky. The movie does tend to sag a little in the middle. It's about 144 minutes long. Why do I always do that? It's an hour and 44 minutes, which relates to 104 minutes. I think about 10 minutes could be chopped out of the middle of this. Some of the family drama gets a little bit repetitive, but that's a minor complaint overall. It's a pretty fascinating little pre-slasher horror film from the 70s. Okay, so let's talk about the cast. The mother, Catherine, is played by Linda Miller, who was the daughter of Jackie Gleason, and the one-time wife of Jason Miller, who we all know from The Exorcist, and is the mom of Jason Patric. And I had talked about Jason Patric, Jason Miller, and Joshua John Miller back on the Halloween 3 episode. Jason Patric and Joshua John Miller are stepbrothers. Jason Miller had a bunch of wives and a bunch of kids with those different wives, and a lot of them are actors. And of course, we all know Brooke Shields from her amazing work in the Lazy Boy commercials. Alice is played by Paula Shepherd, who's kind of an interesting character. She only has 2 film credits, and I wish I could remember who I confuse her with, because it might be a slightly interesting story. But there is another child actor from that era that I always mistake her for. And for the life of me, I can't remember who it is. But she was in a movie called Liquid Sky that is a cult movie from the early 80s. And the interesting thing about Paula Shepherd is that she was 19 years old at the time of Alice Sweet Alice, and yet she was playing a 12-year-old in the movie. And she kind of pulls it off mainly because of her slight frame and her kind of childlike face. You sort of get the indication that she's older in certain shots just because of her body. Yeah, she was seen performing in a play by the director and asked to play this much younger role, and then only did one other movie after that, and I think went on to move to Washington and become a teacher or something like a lot of these people do. Liquid Sky is a movie that I have tried to get through. It is a fairly interesting, super low budget sci-fi movie, kind of new wave punk movie. She does performance art in the film, and it's interesting, but the score is so grating and monotonous and nonstop that I really can't watch more than about 10 or 15 minutes of it at a time. And then Alphonse de Noble plays Mr. Alfonso, the slimy landlord that I mentioned earlier, and I love the interactions between him and Alice in the movie. He is portrayed as a pedophile, and she plays up on that a lot and really holds her own against him in the scenes that they share together. And as I mentioned, he was not a professional actor. He was a bouncer and was in one or two other low-budget movies other than Alice, Sweet Alice, and I think one of the ones with the most notoriety is Blood-Sucking Freaks. Here's something I haven't done in a while. Let's read the review in the Psychotronic Encyclopedia of Film for Alice, Sweet Alice. 1976, Allied Artists. Producer, Richard K. Rosenberg. Director, Alfred Sole. Screenwriters, Rosemary Ritvo and Alfred Sole. Also released as Holy Terror and Communion. Because of Brooke Shields' small role, this shocker has been re-released twice with new titles, each time disappointing folks who go to a film just because a famous underage model is in it. Well, forget about that because this movie is excellent despite the misleading hype. It's the best made and most unsettling psycho shocker in ages. A violently anti-Catholic feature, it takes place during the early 60s in Paterson, New Jersey, where it was filmed. The murders, although not overly gory, are hard to look at, and the audience is clearly thrown off track. You won't be sure who did it until the end, and you won't believe Mr. Alphonse. Brian De Palma's derivative hits pale by comparison. With Lillian Roth, I'll Cry Tomorrow was a film of her life story. Linda Miller, Mildred Clinton, and Niles McMaster, rated R. Wow, a positive review for once. Awesome. Okay, I just wanted to take a minute at the end to go over some technical stuff. I'm using a mock pop filter right now and trying to see if I can get a little bit of that noise out. And I think it's actually working so far. I know that it is probably dropping the volume a little bit, but hopefully the pops from P's, B's, W's, and H's aren't as noticeable. And then just a couple of heads up, the volume 1, the first 3 episodes of Why Didn't I Rent This have been compiled into one 55-minute episode, and the other ones have been dropped off permanently. So if you want to go back and revisit any of those, you can visit that Volume 1 podcast. So this is officially the start of Volume 2, and I have no set number of episodes that I'll do for each volume. I just thought since I was close to 60 minutes with those 3, and since I ended the first season of Wake Up Heavy recently, that I would just go ahead and join those up. And if you haven't already heard about it, the Patreon page is up. There is one donor so far, and that is my good friend Ronald Zerigian, so I'm going to give him a shout out and a thank you on here for signing up. And the first episode is available, and it is on Robert Altman's Images, and I'm sure I've mentioned that on something or another. When the next one is up, I will let you know, either in an episode of Wake Up Heavy or on the blog or on social media. And if you could take a minute to rate and review Wake Up Heavy on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate it. If you have suggestions, comments, complaints, keep them to yourself. No, I'm just kidding. You can use any social media platform or the blog to contact me. All right, I think that should do it for this first episode of Volume 2 of Why Didn't I Write This? Thank you very much for listening, and don't forget to wake up heavy.